weird particle floating through air may cause Alzheimer's. Okay, not good, right? And yes, it has to do with pollution. Okay, well, the plot thickens because it gets a little bit more wild than that, because it's not just simply pollution, let's say. It's a particular element, something that we've talked about semi-recently when we talked about the dark night of the soul, okay? Now check it out. I'll read a little bit from the article here. New research into tiny magnetic particles that float through the air may help scientists unravel the mysterious causes of Alzheimer's disease. In a press release, Australia's University of Technology, Sydney, unveiled new research undertaken by some of its faculty into the possible link between Alzheimer's and magnetite, a pollutant most commonly associated with vehicle exhaust. Not good. Not good. What are we doing? Yeah, well, we're driving cars all the damn time, right? Despite all the research into the degenerative disease that causes memory loss and fatal cognitive decline, scientists still don't really know what causes Alzheimer's. They do know, however, that a vanishingly small percentage of people who develop it inherited the disease, which means that most people got it some other way, okay? And so this other way seems to be presenting itself in this air pollution or this magnetite. Yes, it is a magnetic element now, which is collecting in the brain, causing this. Back to the article here. Quote, fewer than 1% of Alzheimer's cases are inherited, UTS Associate Professor Cindy Gunawan said. Continue, quote, so it is likely the environment and lifestyle play a key role in the development of the disease. As previous studies have shown, living in high pollution areas seems to be a risk factor for developing Alzheimer's. And magnetite, which is also a byproduct of coal burning industrial processes, is often found in larger amounts in the brains of people with the disease than those without. Now, have you noticed recently that there's this new sentiment? I mean, I'm not sure it's new, sort of maybe in the old ways. Everybody kind of wants to go live on a ranch, right? Everybody's like, forget this. I'm out of the city. I'm going to live on a ranch. Okay. That's what's up, right? Everybody's kind of like, yeah, I'm out of here, right? Why? There's a lot of really, kind of grotesque things with city, the high crime rates, all kinds of things, right? I don't know, just the pollution, all kinds of things you can really just take a jab at a city for. But it's not all, let's say, frivolous. I think there's some cases to be made there, but we're told we all can't go live on a ranch like the Obamas or what's that, Martha's Vineyard by the sea, or basically all the people who are just rich and already have their own ranches anyway, several ranches all over the damn place. We can't do that because we're just the plebs, right? But there is sort of this growing sentiment that people are kind of ditching cities and want to go off grid, and and you can't blame them. Like I said, the actual criticisms on cities are not frivolous whatsoever. There's lots of terrible things happening within the cities, and even in many of these things, many of these places you could actually describe are in decline. And so I don't know. Wild stuff to consider as we start. But of course, you know me, and I do like to get weird, and so we're going to get weird tonight as usual. And so it got me thinking in a lot of ways, because first off, magnetite is a magnetic substance. It is sort of a carbon based, like everything is, but like a carbonite, I guess, or is that probably not a word, but it's something that we talked about with that the alchemy edition of the Dark Night of the Soul. When we did that one with the AI and the AI's Dark Night of the Soul, we were talking about the alchemical process of nigredo, Nigredo, or the blackening, which is basically just kind of a stripping down of everything before you rebuild yourself in this alchemical sense to eventually achieve the Philosopher's Stone, which again is a little bit probably out there, a little bit beyond my grasp of knowledge, but it doesn't quite matter because the metaphors, as you know, definitely stack and definitely play here. So as we get going, this is strange because this stuff is actually, this magnetite is actually collecting in our brains, which they've discovered here. They did some studies with mice, as they normally do. Every headline we see in the news cycles may as well have a little star that says in mice, because that's basically how everything is done these days, scientifically anyway. But you get the idea. Suddenly, if we have these actual magnetite particles collecting in our brains, not only do we have a sort of a pollution aspect and maybe a cognitive decline over time, well, it starts to get even more weird when you consider that these things are actually magnetic. And again, back to how I started, our brain is a massive magnetic field. It just has this resonance to it. And so, what the hell's going on with this, and how deep does this get? And that puts us right about where we need to be. I'm going to continue on this in just a second here, but lots of questions to consider, lots of wild ideas. But what if you're sprinkling? Here's the first question: what if you're sprinkling magnetic pollution in microdoses inside of your brain. It is a massive magnetic field, incredibly powerful. And, well, what comes next? We left off there with the idea of these magnetite particles actually collecting in our brains, which they're determining is, again, a pollutant, comes from vehicles, vehicle exhaust, and it's also causing, as we're suddenly learning, which we didn't know previously, we're starting to learn that this may be one of the causes of Alzheimer's disease, which, again, is a horrific thing. It's incredibly just devastating if you've ever been around somebody that had this. It is just just horrific. There's no other way to describe it. It's, one day they recognize you, one day they don't. It's the worst type of decline you could ever imagine. And I hate to make light of it at all. It is that grotesque that our brain can sort of reach a level of atrophy to that degree where we just regress incredibly and don't even understand exactly why it's happening. That's even worse. It is just horrific. Like I said, I'll leave it at that. But if you guys don't know what it is, of course, I'm sure you do. But the links will be in the description to kind of look into this a little bit further if you're interested. But the wild part is that, again, now if we're talking about sort of this magnetic resonance in our brain, we're talking about this magnetite, which also is a magnet by its very definition and its very particles of, let's say, the alchemical process, all right? It's just what it is. And there's a couple things that kind of stood out to me when I was putting the show together and thinking about these ideas, right? And I have some more questions for you, but so these things were esoterically known as lodestones. You guys ever heard this term? So naturally magnetized pieces of magnetite or these lodestones were believed to possess magical properties, which is going to get us into this alchemical business, right, tonight. They were used in ancient divination practices and were thought to have the power to attract love, wealth, and good fortune, okay, which seems fine, right? It seems fine. They're also associated with chakra balancing. We've talked about that on the show here. I'm not an expert in that. I can't really tell you anything about it, but I'll read a little bit about it. In some New Age and alternative healing practices, magnetite is associated with the root chakra. It is linked to grounding, stability, and physical vitality. Practitioners believe that wearing or carrying magnetite can help balance and energize this chakra, okay? Like I said, not an expert there. I'm not a Reiki, whatever all that is. I don't know. Okay. I do know it's a thing. I do know a little bit about it, but I don't know enough to elaborate beyond that. But there's some other weird things that kind of pop out with regard to this, not just the alchemical thing and the blackening and the whole alchemical process, but check this out. Crystal healing. We've heard this before. Magnetite is sometimes used in crystal healing, where it is believed to have grounding and protective properties. It is thought to shield against negative energies, reduce stress, and promote emotional stability. You see, we're starting to see that this is kind of a protective thing that we've been told sort of in esoteric traditions. Well, it turns out that maybe it's not. Maybe we're dealing with something here that's not the best for us, right? And so may not be a good place to kind of start with this, right? But here's where this gets a little even more weird. And I was going to take it down this rabbit hole, but I thought too much. Like you pack too many things into one can and things just get weird, right? But it was also used in navigation. So the magnetic properties of magnetite were used in ancient navigation, with the earliest known compass dating back to the Han Dynasty in China. This led to mystical associations with the mineral, as it was believed to guide travelers and provide a connection to the Earth's energy fields. Okay, now you get the point, right? So the Earth's energy fields, magnetite, they're able to build compasses with this stuff, and so now this stuff is collecting in our brains and causing this just horrific, grotesque decline, as I described previously. Now, if this is a thing, and again, our brain has this massive electromagnetic resonance to it, well, what are we doing here? It almost feels like we're not just polluting ourselves in terms of, let's say, just a good old-fashioned like soot or something like this, carbon in our skull, but then also this magnetic aspect of these tiny particles, these nanoparticles or microparticles. What do they call them? What is it? Nanometer. 200 nanometers in diameter is what we're calling these things, and that's how small these things are. But they do have a latent or natural resonant magnetism to them in natural cases. etc. Okay, so you get what I'm saying here. Now, if this is the case, and we have, as we know, the attraction and repulsion aspect of magnets and magnetism and how this stuff kind of works together, I do wonder if this stuff in our brain is actually causing sort of a like a haywire effect, like you put some magnets together and things start facing different directions, and you know what I mean, something like this. And even sort of like the idea of like a pole flip, right? This whole idea of a kind of a wandering magnetic field based on not just, let's say, a natural process, but an actual pollution in our brain of these, let's say, chemical elements of magnetism themselves, which is incredibly strange and incredibly perplexing when you consider that, if let's say as I said before, the actual secular materialist would consider consciousness to be local. It's built into us. It doesn't go beyond that. We are conscious. We think, therefore we are, this type of thing. Well, of course, when you take it to the next level, though, of what consciousness actually is, we're talking about maybe a connection to each other in maybe these electromagnetic fields. We're talking to possibly a connection to the Earth itself with these within and as part of these electromagnetic fields. Okay, what heart chakras? Again, I'm not a Reiki practitioner, so I can't really tell you that type of stuff. Maybe some of you guys can, but this gets wild when you start to consider that maybe our electromagnetic, let's say, electromagnetism of our brain might be going screwy because of this exact thing, and it's causing possibly this weirdness. Okay, and so this gets strange because not just are we talking about sort of ancient compasses and maybe some esoteric wisdom here, crystal healing and whatnot. It also seems like we've been kind of meddling with this stuff for a very long time, and I do wonder, once again, as always, what does that mean for not just us in the past, but also us currently and into the future? Because this type of stuff, it shouldn't be here. It shouldn't be in our brain, right? Shout out to Donna in the hospital again. Feel well, get better fast. Oh yeah, that's not good. That's not good. Frequency, prayers, vibrations, whatever you believe, out to our good friend Donna. Thanks for popping in and hanging out with us. Get better fast. That is not good. Okay, so lots of ways to consider this. And look, there's a parallel here. So with this actual sort of pollution of this magnetite, and maybe basically, I guess you could kind of look at this as not just sort of a pollution in the aspect of like a carbon style pollution. I mean, now we're kind of talking about even a possible sort of magnetic pollution. You see where I'm going, and meaning that if we're sort of kind of dropping little tiny pieces of magnets in one of the most finely tuned instruments in the cosmos, as I said last night, which is supposed to be the human brain, how can things actually go haywire? Or is that what's causing things to go haywire? Or is this actually built into us as part of a larger, let's say, resonance communication aspect of maybe not just Alzheimer's, but something else, which we'll get to momentarily here, because I'm not exactly sure. Reading this, I was like, okay, my mind went a lot of ways, as it always does when I think about this stuff. But considering that we're talking about sort of a pollutant, but then also sort of a magnetic aspect here, it did make me wonder about all the rest of the uses of the old ways of what they use this magnetite for. And again, it is back to that alchemical tradition of the blackening. They used this in that carbon aspect to kind of strip down back to that dark night of the soul bit, which is pretty wild stuff. Thanks for the links there. I see you guys. Okay, what's up? Average Discussion says this in the chat. They argue that the amount of magnetism needed to realign the minimal amounts of metallic elements within the bloodstream would need to be insane in order to have an effect. Yet they have been able to do magnetic stimulation pinpoint focused onto specific locations within the brain to attempt to treat or cure depression. So I think there is so much unknown research that could yield insane benefits if focused correctly, and that's exactly the point. So back to there's a bunch of links down here talking about not just let's say a resonant theory of consciousness, which we're going to get to in the rest of this, but also this parallel of you guys remember the old story of leaded gasoline. You guys remember this? Before everything was unleaded, everything was leaded. Back to Henry Ford and the original automobile, and even these guys knowing full well that this stuff was poison. I mean, it was written like centuries ago that lead was poisonous in so many aspects. Okay, and yet these bastards were still like, it's going to be fine because we're going to make a ton of money. Okay, and that takes us back to last night. We'll time travel a little bit. Is that sort of stupid stupid human filter, that like knuckleheadedness, the obtuse nature of ourselves, that we will cut off our nose to spite our face. It's insane. This type of thing is just punch yourself in the face agony, okay? But there's a story. If you guys aren't familiar with the story, the individual was Charles F. what's his name? Kettering. And in 1921, this whole thing was coming to a head, and he was learning that, of course, not just were we putting this leaded fuel into these vehicles, it was poisoning everything. It was poisoning the soil. It was poisoning all the life forms on Earth. It was poisoning every damn thing. And it was one of those invisible poisons. It was everywhere. It was making people sick. And if you read some of the actual, where is it from? There's, again, links are going to be in the description from the conversation. They were, in the factories that they were putting these engines together and testing all this stuff. The people were getting sick. They were getting sick and they were going insane. And then they still took this out to market, okay? Not giving a damn, which is incredible to me. But check this out. So when GM began selling leaded gasoline, public health experts questioned its decision. One called lead a serious menace to public health, and another called concentrated tetraethyl, I think is how you say it, a malicious and creeping poison. Now here's the wild part. So General Motors and Standard Oil waived the warnings aside until disaster struck in October 1924. 24 workers at a refinery in Bayway, New Jersey, came down with severe lead poisoning from a poorly designed GM process. At first, they became disoriented, then burst into insane fury and collapsed into hysterical laughter. Many had to be wrestled into straitjackets. 6 died, and the rest were hospitalized. Around the same time, 11 more workers died, and several dozen more were disabled at similar GM and DuPont plants across the U.S. And these companies are still running, by the way. And this is exactly back to last night a little bit of time travel and me trying to make up for a botched mic show, meaning me. I messed up, not you guys. You guys made an amazing show. But what the hell's going on? It seems like we have this same parallel rearing its ugly head, except this time we're not talking about lead poisoning. We're talking about some sort of magnetic poisoning in the atmosphere itself, in our brains itself. And so the questions mount, meaning let's check some questions. So specifically, how might the discovery of this magnetite particles in our brain and their potential change that magnetic resonance of consciousness? Do you think there is some sort of actual aspect that a actual, let's say, magnetic pollution could cause, not just to our cognitive ability, but maybe to something else? Let's say our tuning to the Akashic record or something like this. Again, if you believe in this stuff, like I said, you don't have to believe in any of these things to have the conversation and think in conceptual terms, okay? And that's the point. But anyway, so lots of questions. We got more questions as we go tonight, but this is a weird one because not only are we seem to be doing the stupid human thing and following in the footsteps of the past and this poisoning that just would not end. Well, it finally ended with unleaded gasoline, but here we are with something else very similar, except it's poisoning us in the magnetic spectrum. What the hell does that mean? Is it even possible? And of course, how far off could I be? And that's really where my mind is at tonight, because I'm always wrong about everything, and that's okay. But I do think there's something here to consider, because it is a wild concept that maybe, just maybe, our most important functioning cognitive organ is being polluted in magnetic ways.